Most travelers don't realize how much money they're losing long before they ever step inside an airport. For years, I was one of those people. I wasn't doing anything dramatic or reckless with my travel planning. I just made the same small, harmless-looking mistakes everyone makes. I searched for flights the way I thought was normal. I booked when the price seemed fine. I believed that the first reasonable fare I saw was probably the best I was going to get. And guess what? None of that was true. I wasn't unlucky. I wasn't cursed with expensive routes. I just didn't understand how airlines actually price flights in 2026. And once I finally dug into the system, my entire approach changed. Welcome to Passport Pointers, the place where we expose the unwritten rules of travel so you don't keep wasting money on things airlines hope you never question. Today, I'm breaking down exactly how I cut my flight costs in half. Not because I found some secret loophole that nobody else knows, and not because I suddenly became a full-time travel hacker, but because I learned how to stop doing the things that make flights more expensive. Most of the time, I save around $100 to $200 per ticket, and every once in a while, when the timing lines up just right, I land a deal that's 40 to 50% cheaper than the price I would have paid before I understood these patterns. That's not a miracle. That's a strategy, and once you see how the system really works, you can do it too. My transformation started with a single moment. The moment I realized someone sitting next to me on a flight paid almost half of what I did for the exact same seat, on the exact same plane, bought around the exact same time. I wasn't mad at them. Good for them. I was mad at the idea that I kept missing something obvious. I thought maybe they had some special membership or some secret discount code that I didn't have. But instead of brushing it off, I finally started asking questions. That one moment led me into a rabbit hole of research, testing, failures, experiments, and comparisons. And what I discovered wasn't magic at all. It was simply knowledge airlines hope you never gain, because uninformed travelers pay more. The first thing I learned was that searching for flights on the wrong days was costing me more than anything else. I had no idea that certain days consistently produce higher prices, not because the flight itself is more expensive, but because airlines know when people tend to search. Sundays are one of the worst days to check prices. Travelers spend the weekend fantasizing about vacations, and by Sunday night, they're ready to hit the search button. Airlines know this, so they raise prices because they know people are emotionally primed to buy. Fridays are another expensive day because last-minute business travelers inflate demand. And I used to do all my searches on Fridays because that's when I finally had time. Once I shifted to midweek evenings, the difference was immediate. I started seeing prices drop to levels I never saw on weekends. I wasn't saving the world. I was just avoiding predictable traps. The next breakthrough came when I realized I'd been relying on the same booking website for everything. I used one platform for years because it was familiar. It looked simple, and I assumed all booking sites showed the same inventory. They don't. Every website has different relationships with airlines. Some show discounted fares that others hide. Some prioritize flights that earn them higher commissions. Some exclude budget carriers entirely. I started comparing at least 3 different platforms each time I searched. And suddenly flights I thought were expensive turned out to be overpriced only on that one familiar site I kept trusting. The moment I stopped believing that one website had the best deals, my entire view of flight pricing shifted. Then came the biggest mistake I didn't know I was making. I had no idea airlines track your search behavior across multiple sessions. Every time you look up the same flight again and again, the system recognizes that you are interested. And what does interest translate to? Higher prices. I can't tell you how many times I thought prices were rising because the seats were filling up, when in reality, the system was raising the price because I kept checking. Once I started using private browsing, I stopped triggering those increases. And guess what? Prices stayed stable longer. Before that, I was basically bidding against myself without realizing it. Another key moment in my transformation came when I realized I was booking either way too early or way too late. I used to think booking months in advance guaranteed the best price. It doesn't. Early bookings lock you into prices before airlines gather enough data to adjust fares. Booking too late forces you to buy whatever scraps are left. The sweet spot depends on the destination, but most flights fall into a window where airlines optimize fares based on real demand, not fear-based buying. For domestic trips, the window is often 30 to 60 days before departure. For international travel, it's closer to 60 to 120 days. Once I started timing my searches within those windows, I consistently found better prices without constantly refreshing the page like a stock trader. Another game changer came when I started considering nearby airports. For years, I searched only the main airport for my destination because that's what everyone does. But many cities have multiple airports, and the secondary ones often offer lower taxes and more competitive fares. When I began comparing all airports within a reasonable distance, I discovered flights that were cheaper, less crowded, and sometimes had better schedules. This especially helped with international routes, where nearby airports sometimes drop the price by hundreds of dollars because budget carriers operate there. I had been ignoring half the options available to me. Around this point in my transformation, I hit another major insight when I started exploring mixed airline itineraries. I used to book everything round trip on the same airline because I thought it was simpler. But when I began splitting my searches into one-way segments, entirely new combinations appeared. Combinations that were significantly cheaper than round-trip bundles. Sometimes the outbound flight was dramatically cheaper on one airline, while the return was cheaper on another. Some search engines show these mixed itineraries automatically. Others hide them. Once I learned to search each direction separately, I found flights that were far cheaper than anything I saw using round-trip searches. One of the most surprising shifts in my behavior came when I stopped ignoring early morning and overnight flights. For years, I filtered out flights that required waking up before sunrise or landing late at night. They seemed inconvenient, but those flights were consistently cheaper because demand is lower. Convenience has become one of the most profitable factors airlines rely on. They know people choose times that fit their schedule, which means primetime departures cost more, not because the plane is better, but because they know customers will pay extra to avoid a little discomfort. When I opened myself up to slightly less convenient travel windows, prices dropped noticeably, but there was still another area I was losing money without knowing it. Fare classes. In 2026, economy doesn't mean economy. Each airline has a long list of fare subclasses that determine everything from baggage rights to seat selection to refund options. I used to buy the cheapest fare because I thought it was smart, but many of those fares came with restrictions that later cost more money to fix than the savings were worth. Sometimes the lowest fare didn't allow a carry-on. Sometimes it charged extra to pick a seat. Sometimes it didn't allow changes at all. Once I began reading the fare rules before booking, I stopped choosing tickets that would punish me later. It wasn't about paying extra. It was about avoiding the illusion of savings when the restrictions made the fare more expensive in the end. Before I go any further, if this breakdown is helpful and you want more content like this every week, hit the subscribe button. It's free, it supports the channel, and it ensures you never miss the travel strategies airlines hope you never figure out. Now let's get into the last part of this transformation, because this is where everything finally clicked. One of the smartest habits I picked up was setting up price alerts. Before this, I would search once, see a price, panic a little, and book because I felt pressured. But flight prices move constantly. Alerts showed me price drops I would have never caught on my own. Sometimes they revealed discount cycles that lasted only a few hours. Other times, they caught mistake fares, flash deals, and quieter price dips that happened late at night or early in the morning. I wasn't hunting for deals nonstop. The deals were coming to me. This was the tool that finally shifted me from reactive booking to proactive booking, the final piece of the puzzle. And the moment I knew I had actually transformed the way I book flights came when I fully understood how search engines manipulate results. Airlines and booking platforms rearrange flight listings to push the options they want you to buy. Sometimes they highlight flights with higher margins. Sometimes they bury the cheapest flights under long lists of preferred routes. Sometimes they nudge you toward itineraries with longer layovers because they make more profit on those partnerships. Once I stopped trusting the first page of results and started scrolling, comparing, and checking alternative dates, I found flights I never would have seen otherwise. Suddenly, what used to feel like guessing became a strategy. So how did I cut my flight costs in half? I didn't find a cheat code. I didn't hack the system. I didn't uncover anything that requires special access. I just stopped making the mistakes airlines rely on to keep prices high. Most of the time, I now save around $100 to $200 per ticket compared to what I used to pay. And every once in a while, when the timing lines up, the route aligns just right, and the demand fluctuates in my favor, I find a deal that's 40 or 50% cheaper. Not because I'm lucky, but because I finally understand how flights are priced in the first place. And that's the real transformation. Booking flights went from stressful guesswork to something predictable, manageable, and even enjoyable. You don't need to become an expert to save money. You just need to know what to avoid and when to search. These small changes add up fast. And once you start applying them, you'll realize how much money you've been leaving on the table. Thanks for watching Passport Pointers, and I'll see you in the next video.